Hi and welcome to Central Online. We are back after a little hiatus over the summer. We are back in full swing. Everything in church is back in full swing. Our kids ministries are back, our youth ministry is back. Life groups started this week. Alpha is starting this week. Everything is coming back in the life of the church, and so is Church Online. So now officially your Sundays have just got that little bit better. But we have an amazing episode for you today. A few weeks ago, we had some baptisms at the beach, and two of those people who were baptized are sharing their testimony on screen for you today. This is a truly amazing stories, and I know that you are going to enjoy these testimonies.
I'm Julie, born and bred in Ibroch, and I'm married to Barry, and we've got 3 boys, Finlay, Ethan and Aidan.
What is it that you do?
I am a nurse. I work at the local surgery. Prior to that, I worked in Fraserburgh Hospital in Aberdeen before that, so about 22 years of nursing behind me now.
So what caused you to make the decision to get baptised?
It was actually a prompt from Lisa. After a toddler's ended for the summer, we went for lunch to the Lighthouse Cafe, and she was speaking about baptism, and from that point it was like a gentle nudge, just kept coming back to me, and I thought time was probably right. So I had a wee look at baptism and sort of it represented, find out a wee bit more, and seeing that it was just a declaration of your faith. And that I had chosen Jesus as my saviour, and I wanted to just sort of publicly declare that.
What does getting baptised mean to you?
Baptism to me is sort of about a rebirth. When I looked up baptism and what it meant in the Bible and things, I'd previously been christened, and I christened my boys, and then took the understanding that a baptism within the assembly understanding was sort of in the water, you were dying along with Christ, the old self, believing in repentance, and coming up out of that water was starting a new life with him at the forefront of it.
What challenges have you faced in life, and how has your faith helped you?
One of the big challenges, I would say, I was really lucky. I had a really good upbringing, really supportive family. But when I started my nurse training, I moved to Aberdeen and I started to get a wee bit homesick. And I struggled a wee bit with sort of the demands that was placed on you. You were only maybe 17, 18 and left in charge of looking after 20, 30 people. Some of them were really sick and your eyes were really opened to a completely different world, full of trauma, hurt and pain. You were really with people at the worst time of their lives. And I just started to find that people I noticed within the hospital walls were kind of looking for a hope and a peace. And when the chaplains visited, that's when you sort of found prayers being said and a comfort and things being seen. And I just realised that's what I'd been missing.
So when did you make that decision to put your faith in Jesus?
I think I've always kind of had sort of Christian teaching. I've been brought up with a lot of believers round about me and started going to church with my granny years and years ago. Really was probably too young to understand a lot of things then. But I then moved on, went to Bible class and Covenanters and had a wee break during my nurse training, but then just decided that that sense of belonging was missing. So I started coming back to church and I decided just to move from the Church of Scotland group that we'd been with to starting at the Assembly. And I went to Alpha. And that was probably the best decision that I ever made. I'd seen the flyers for it in a surgery, and Priscilla sort of said to me, "Do you fancy going?" And the first week I was probably really nervous. I thought, I didn't ken none of these people. I really hadn't got that much knowledge of the Bible, even though I'd been going to Sunday school sort of for years and years. But they were the most welcoming bunch of people, and I started to learn more and more. And I was allowed to just ask any question, didn't matter how silly it was. They were just happy that you were coming along and that you were interested. And then I think it was the 6th of February in 2020, just before everything stopped with COVID, that I decided to give my life to Jesus. And it was with Priscilla just sitting outside in the road in a car, just the two of us. And it was just a private moment between us. But my life's just changed since I asked for that salvation. Everything's just got better and better.
What would you say has changed?
The peace and the hope and the joy that that faith in him brings. He just brings a goodness and a mercy that can't really be found anywhere else. It's definitely changed me as a person and as a mum and as a wife for the better. Every week when we come along on a Sunday and we've joined life groups and sometimes at a prayer meeting online, that as well, the teaching that you get in each of those sessions just helps you get through the week with a hope. And I think now just I'm free living in him.
So what are your hopes for the future?
My hopes for the future is that I continue to keep seeking his word and that my family come to know him as well. My boys love coming along to Sunday school and the camps, and I just hope that they keep looking towards him and sort of following his teaching, and that they come and ask for salvation when the time's right for them.
Is there anything that you'd like to leave for people who are watching at home?
I think if anybody's thinking of coming along, just do it. Just leave any sort of reservations that you've got, any worries or concerns, and just take that step and walk through the door, whether it's Alpha or coming along to some of the outreach groups, because the change that you can bring into your life it just brings so much joy.
Who are you and where are you from?
My name's Alan West. I'm from Macduff. I was born in 1973. I was the first born of two to my parents, Alan and Betty West. I had a mostly happy childhood and upbringing in Macduff. School days sailed by pretty trouble-free. Attended Sunday school and then the children's meetings at Macduff. And my grandparents in Parnokie were strong Christian believers. And looking back, they left a definite stamp on me and gave me a good awareness of God. But a bit more about them later. I left school with just a handful of O-levels because I guess all I was interested in was going to sea, going to fishing like my dad, my granddad and the generations before me. Like most teenagers, I stopped going to meetings and became more and more interested and aspired to just the things of teenage years. That's cars, quines, beers. And they became pretty affordable, to be honest, when I started fishing and making good money. And by this point, God and Jesus and all that stuff, it just looked boring to me, to be honest, and it just sadly wasn't on my radar at all. Teenage life was good, and all the things I've mentioned was kind of done to excess. And by the age of 20, I'd kind of stopped that and met my wife, Carol Barclay, and we got engaged in 1995 and got married in 1998. We were blessed with 3 children, Alan in 2002, Lucy in 2005, and Jake in 2008. Now, by this time, I'd left the fishing as my full-time job and got a job at Macduff Harbour in order to spend more time with my family. And also to work my creel boat in evenings along with my dad. And that was enough to just keep the draw of the sea at bay, so to speak. So I guess looking back, in short, life was good. I had everything I wanted or needed, or so I thought. I guess I'd just been fortunate in life, and I'd sailed through pretty much with no problems or issues, and life had just been plain sailing, really. But I had, however, arrived enough a critical and dismissive of anybody that claimed they had stress or depression. I used to say, fit if they got to be depressed about, fit if they got to worry about. There's nothing I do with them. They're just looking for sympathy. They're lazy. They're attention seeking. But how wrong was I? And I was about to finish out what it really meant for myself. So my story, in October 2018, at age 45, after having nearly perfect physical and mental health all my life, I found myself with severe depression and I suffered a complete mental breakdown. I was unable to work. I was off work for 6 months. I lost 4.5 stone, which, as you can see, I found again. I was bedridden for a big chunk of that 6 months. I was unable to function normally or think rationally. It didn't matter how many times my wife, my loved ones tried to assure me that I'd done nothing wrong, it was all going to be okay. It just wouldn't register with my unbalanced mind. At first I tried walking for miles and miles, sometimes 10, 15 miles at a time, just to clear my head. It made no difference. Soon I was in no fit state to even walk to the end of the street. I wasn't eating. 1 week I ate half a bowl of soup for a week. So it kind of puts it into perspective. This is for a guy that loves a fish supper, right? So my GP was great. He understood what was happening with me. He prescribed some medication, and I tried everything he suggested and everything that I could think of to stop this process, including counselling, but nothing seemed to work. At this time I was all friends. For as far afield as America, I even got in touch, tried to help me, tried to encourage my fellow Christians. Just nothing seemed to work for me. They tried to assure me, and I just couldn't accept it. By Christmas 2019, I was at the bottom of a black pit, and I could see no way out. I was done with life. I was through. So January 2019, in one last desperate ditch attempt to try something, I summoned the strength to get out of my bed, and I asked my wife if she would drive me to Parnokie, to my grandparents' graveside. It's them I was speaking about earlier. I fell to my knees on the wet grass. I was blinded by tears, and I pleaded to my granda. I says, if your Lord is real, the Lord you've spoken about, then please, please ask him to help me. Nothing. Nae blinding light, nae sign of any kind. Nothing. Okay, so the next Sunday, my dad was sitting at my bedside with me, which he'd done every single day for nearly 6 months, 2 or 3 times a day. And he asked me if I'd like to come to church with him at night. Initially I said, no, it's nae for me, no, it won't do nae good. And then he told me, he says, well, the congregation, as believers, had been praying for me for weeks. And he urged me to go and just to come. So against my better judgment, I said, okay, I'll come with you. The seed was planted. That was a seed being planted with me. So I entered the church anyway, doing in Gamery. I was hiding behind my dad, just like a little schoolboy, all nervous and shaky, hoping nobody would notice me or speak to me. I sat at the back in a corner, and then I noticed a scroll on the wall in the church, and it read this. It said, I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope and a future. So I'm thinking, well, could this apply to me? Does God want to give me a hope and a future? I surely hope so. And that, friends, that was my life-changing moment. That's when the Lord revealed himself to me. The Lord had heard my pleas at the graveside a few days earlier after that. So I managed to get hold of my granddad I'm speaking about. I managed to get hold of his Bible, his old Bible. He's long since passed away, but I managed to get hold of his old Bible and read it. I was reading passages that he'd marked in biro pen. He was somewhat a preacher, so he'd mark little passages and preach them maybe at meetings himself. I kept going back to church every Sunday evening and reading more and more of his Bible. And suddenly it all seemed to make sense. It all started to feel real. This wasn't fictional stories. What I was reading and hearing preached in the church was a real deal. And I could relate it to real life situations that I was experiencing and that I'd experienced in the past. So in time, with a lot of support from my family and friends, I got back to work and gradually became stronger physically and mentally each day and got my confidence in life back. It hasn't been plain sailing, and I have had blips along the way, but I now have the Lord in my corner. What a friend we have in Jesus, right enough. So, looking back, really, the Lord had been at me for most of my life, and I just chose to ignore and reject him. But I firmly believe now that he allowed me to be brought to my knees in order for the scales to fall from my eyes. And for the Lord to reveal himself and for me to accept him as my Saviour. So on 28th October 2021, I gave my life to the Lord at AOG in Fraserburgh. John Watt and Lisa Loyal prayed the sinner's prayer with me. And it's the best choice I've made. I'm far from perfect, and I will continue to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But this time, when I'm making mistakes, I've got a great assurance that Jesus will be there to catch me when I fall and forgive me and strengthen me.
So, what challenges have you faced in your life, and how has your faith helped you?
Well, certainly in recent times, I would say the biggest challenge for me, it's something that a lot of folk have probably faced, but I lost my best pal in May 2019, age 45. We'd been brought up together. We were cousins, we were born just a day apart. We were like brothers. I didn't have a brother, he was my brother. And I really struggled to understand it. That really tested my newfound faith. I had just come to faith and I was really struggling to grasp it. But I leaned heavily into the Lord at the time and read my Bible a lot. And as the song lyric says, it says, further along we'll know all about it, further along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine, we'll understand it all by and by. So I guess we've just to hear the faith that we will understand someday why these things happen.
And what does baptism mean to you?
Well, for me, baptism, it publicly acknowledges my belief in my faith in the gospel message, and I think it symbolises a sinner's entrance into the community of believers being a church for the rest of my life.
What are your hopes for the future?
My biggest hopes for the future is to see my wife and my children come to the Lord, same as I have done. That's got to be my biggest hope.
Is there anything you'd like to leave with those who are watching at home?
The one thing I can leave you with is my go-to Bible passage when I'm faced with anxiety or struggling with things is Ephesians 6, 10 to 18, full armour of God. I'll just give you a line out of just now. It's be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes.
Well, thank you so much to Julie and Alan for taking the time out of your busy week to share that powerful story with us. We have a baptism happening again in December. This time it's in-house, not at the beach, so you won't have to worry about freezing to death. We have a few people already keen and excited to get baptised, but if you're interested in getting baptised in January, then please let us know. And if you haven't joined us for an in-person service yet, then please join us. We have 2 services, 9:30 and 11, happening here at church. But that's all from Church Online this week. We'll see you next week.